So, welcome everybody. We're going to be doing a podcast about one of the newer digital forums that we're using on NASSJ. And I'm Jonathan Grauer, editor-in-chief of NASSJ. And it's great today to have Harold Moore, who is one of the associate digital editors focusing on the visual abstracts with us. So welcome, Harold.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Perfect. If we could just kind of start off with maybe you telling me, how did you get involved with NASSJ?
Yeah, so I've been the associate editor for visual abstracts since the summer of 2021. And my role is really to design and publish visual abstracts for the manuscripts accepted by the journal. And how I got plugged in with that is just, I have an interest in data visualization and saw that there's a really exciting opportunity to be involved with the journal at this level, which is pretty exciting for a medical student. And I've really enjoyed the experience so far and looking to continue to grow the visual abstract presence for the journal.
I think that sounds great. And I think not everyone's going to really know what visual abstracts are. Maybe you can give a little bit of background of what they are.
Yeah, certainly. So visual abstracts are a really concise and colorful distillation of a peer-reviewed published manuscript. And typically it contains a brief mention of the methods, maybe a visual representation of the results, and a couple arrows for an increase or a decrease, and including maybe a key figure or visual from the paper itself, and then a quick summary of the conclusions. And typically the methods are not as much of a focus, and it's primarily a visual experience, something that you can really gain the message of the paper from just a quick glance, maybe 20 or 30 seconds. And it's really shaped in a way that's scrollable and clickable on social media or the internet.
Great. And that ties in with what I was going to ask next is kind of how do people see or hear about these visual abstracts?
Right. So as I mentioned, they're very social media friendly. And so they're often on social media like Twitter, Facebook, or on the journal websites themselves. And I should really note that there's a growing body of literature actually that has studied how people interact with these visual abstracts. And they've been shown to really enhance the papers themselves on journal websites. Visual abstracts are shared 8 times more often on social media and really drives an increase in visits to the website, engagement with the actual paper. So really social media focused, but also through the journal websites themselves. That's
great. And I know we've kind of really increased the visibility, both on a regular ongoing basis through Twitter of these visual abstracts, but also kind of highlighting kind of the ones that have been done on the NASSJ site itself. Maybe just a little bit about how they're made, like you use special software, special tools you use. How are they made?
Yeah, so actually they're made with pretty simple tools that most researchers tend to use already, like Microsoft PowerPoint. And it's just a way to create compelling visuals. In some ways, at least in my mind, the simpler, the better. My team and I create our visual abstracts using PowerPoint, but we use this really cool library of supplemental symbols and icons through the journal subscription with a website called the Noun Project, which gives us access to tens of thousands of icons that we can use to really supplement the visual message and create colorful abstracts. That being said, I think in the future, I would love to integrate some higher level graphic design using Adobe or other software that could maybe provide some more flexibility in what we do today.
Great. I know that you and the team have made most of them to date. Can authors themselves make these for the papers that they submit? How does that work?
Yes, they can. I mean, right now, my team and I, as you mentioned, tend to create them, but I think authors would be really exciting if they submit their own visual abstracts to the editorial staff. But given they don't necessarily have access to the massive library of icons we have, I think that we could certainly complement their work with that. But so far, we really haven't sought the author's input in our first dozen or so visual abstracts completed right now. And I think that's a really exciting possibility because I think that a risk that I always run when trying to quickly summarize a paper is that there's a possibility of misrepresenting the data or not emphasizing a message the authors might want to emphasize. So I think that that's a great opportunity and a really exciting possibility is that the authors themselves could submit their visual abstract that we could then help them tweak and really perfect.
That's great. And I kind of think about a lot of these visual abstracts as being in the vein of electronic posters. How would you distinguish those?
Yeah, so I think that visual abstracts are really fundamentally much more concise. They should be glanceable and understood in less than a minute, really, ideally closer to 20, 30 seconds. And of course, the manuscript is linked right there if someone were to want to delve into those deeper details about the methods or sample size. And I think when we really think about e-posters, those are also an evolving format, but tend to be more of a direct substitute for print posters, which themselves, more often than not, tend to be a close word-for-word reproduction of the written abstract itself that was submitted and accepted. So I think that e-posters and posters in general might want to take note of the success of visual abstracts and the recent excitement around visual abstracts, because reducing the number of words and really focusing on that 20 to 30 second takeaway is really important. And coincidentally, as a medical student, someone who stood next to many a poster in my time, the less information on the poster and the more it makes the viewer engage with the person presenting that poster to find out more. So I think that in a nutshell, visual abstracts are a really distillation of the peer-reviewed paper, while e-posters are, at least in my mind right now, a PDF version of what would otherwise be the print poster presented at a conference.
And I've been seeing more and more posters as either e-posters, even hanging posters, that look a lot like what I think of as visual abstracts. It's kind of blending the line between those two. I like your point, though, that sometimes when you see a poster at a conference, you don't always have access to the source information. I wonder, maybe as that happens, the line between what you're looking at and how to get to additional information, as that gets easier, maybe all these lines blur a little bit.
Right. I think we're fortunate that with visual abstracts, we have the peer-reviewed manuscript right there, which I think really sets it apart from e-posters, in that with an e-poster, the manuscript may not be available. And certainly there's no copies of the print version or a PDF of the printed manuscript right there for the viewer to look at. So I think visual abstracts are able to do such a good job of distilling the message because we know that we have the material and the depth available right there.
Great. Perfect. Well, it's really exciting to see more and more of these kind of show up to both, getting communicated out, Twitter and other social media, as well as on the journal itself. Kind of any other general thoughts?
Yeah, I think that just kind of an interesting illustration of how visual abstracts might be different from an e-poster or something like that is that we see that in visual abstracts, at least to date, we've rarely included something like the sample size, and very few have a p-value listed. So I think that both of those things, when you begin to think about when you typically evaluate literature or look for in a poster, it's really there. And so I think that the fact that sample size and p-values maybe aren't in visual abstracts really express the true nature of the visual abstracts, and that it's truly a really distilled and really concentrated dose of what the paper's message is about. So I think that it's very social media friendly, and I think it's really exciting to kind of bring those icons and colors and figures from the paper to bear, and certainly a challenge in some ways to try and distill, the hard work of the authors and the critical review of the editorial staff into just a 10 to 20 second glance.
That's great. Good. And we talked about kind of the work that you and your team are doing, that fact that authors can do this. How about others? If people are interested in getting to be part of this process, what can they do? How can they reach out?
Yeah, I welcome anyone who's interested in seeking input on making a visual abstract for this journal or other journals. And I'm more than willing to help out with helping them access our massive library of icons and figures to really help make the visual abstract stand out. You can reach out to me directly, and my email information will be linked to my name on the editorial page, or my email is hgm2001@med.cornell.edu. So feel free to reach out with any advice, and I'm happy to help provide icons as needed to really help shape the visual abstract.
Well, that sounds great. Thank you for really doing this and getting this going for NASSJ.
Thank you so much for your time, and I'm really excited to continue improving them and being a part of this process.